Hey everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel that I am just starting. This is my first video. I wanted to share the painting that I've been working on. This is a copy of an Albert Bierstadt painting, who is one of my favorite painters. And I believe the original is called California Spring. The original is much bigger than this one. Anyway, this is a 24 by 36 stretch canvas. It's a cotton canvas, and it's done in oil paint. Oh yeah, so Albert Bierstadt is one of my favorite painters. He did these very grandiose, romantic type of landscapes. So I've been painting on and off since I was 13. I'm 31 now. I started this painting in 2021 or 2022, and I did most of the beginning prep work for it. And then it's just been sitting off to the side. In the last few weeks, about a month ago or so, I started working on it again. So I'd like to go over how I started this. Obviously, it started as a blank canvas. I bought it from a store. It's a cotton canvas. And then I decided to put like a few layers of gesso on it so that way it's a little bit smoother. So what I used is either, I can't remember if I used this one or the other, but this is Grumbacher 525 gesso. And this is kind of thick paste. Let me see. You can kind of see it's not like super runny or anything. And I thin that down with water. And then I'll apply that to the canvas with like a gesso brush. I don't know if I have one laying around, but they're basically like this. Like this is a Blick gesso brush, right? Just kind of bristles. Apply that thinly, let it dry, and then sand it. Oh. And if I didn't use that, then I probably just used Utrecht Professional Gesso. They're very similar. And then once the gesso is dry, I lightly sand it with sandpaper and wipe off any dust, and then I apply the next layer. Usually I go in like different directions with the weave of the canvas. And I apply a few layers just to make it a smoother surface. And then next I tone the canvas. And what I did for that was use burnt sienna. Let me get a canvas, I can show you. So it might look something like this once I tone it. So once the canvas is toned, the next step is to transfer the image to it. The way I do that is with tracing paper and a gridding system. I just make a 1-inch grid that equals the same size of the canvas with tracing paper. And then my reference photo, I grid that so that way it has the same amount of squares. And then just draw that on with like regular pencil onto the tracing paper. And sometimes you have to, depending on the size, you might have to tape two pieces of this together. And then to actually transfer the sketch onto the canvas, I use this transfer paper. I forget the exact brand of this, but if you just search like graphite tracing paper, you can find it online. So I'll put the dark side down against the surface of the canvas. And then the gridded tracing paper sketch that I did, I'll put that over the canvas and I'll tape it to the top to secure it so it doesn't move. And then, so the tracing paper would be over this, and then I take like a pen and just draw over the lines, and that will transfer the image to the canvas. And so here's an example of that. Obviously you have the burnt sienna tone underneath, and then all of these lines in here were transferred with that paper I just showed you. And the good thing is these don't rip off. So after the image was transferred to the canvas, I started to just block in some of the dark values with burnt umber. I didn't really do a very finished monochromatic underpainting at all. I really just put in the dark shadows like throughout the tree branches, maybe some of these, the foliage area in here, some of the cows, and then some of these trees in the hill kind of in shadow in this tree here. But anything in the background, I didn't really underpaint with any type of monochromatic underpainting. And I do have an older picture, so I'll show you now like what that looks like. So in that photo, you can see that the tree area, like the foliage isn't painted yet. And so it has that very like burnt sienna kind of orange look. But the darks in the tree trunks are painted in. And that's what I mean by I just went in and painted darks with burnt umber. So after that very like kind of loose burnt umber layer, I went in and just started putting in layers of color. And they were very thin at first, but I kind of just built up in layers. That's how I've basically painted this. It's just been a slow buildup of layers. But I'm doing this copy because I really like Albert Bierstadt paintings. One of my favorite landscape painters. A lot of his paintings have dramatic contrast in the lighting. This is more kind of a simple scene, but some of his other paintings have like these very grand mountains and light coming through and everything like that. Which still have that with the sky here, but And with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the medium in this video, because at first I was using liquid, and it was actually the first time that I used liquid ever. It was like a month ago. Even though I'd been painting on and off since I was 13, I've always heard about liquid because you see it all over YouTube and articles and forums. So I decided to try it. Just used something like this, liquid original. I also had liquid impasto and liquid fine detail. But at first it was convenient because it dried fast, and I liked that part of it. But the smell I can't stand. After a few hours, it gives me a headache. And I also didn't really like how tacky it was after a while. Like and especially on the palette, the paint would just really tack up after a few hours. And there are times where I'm down in this like studio area, and I'm painting for like 6-7 hours, and so it's like you have to clear that paint off the palette. Anything that you already kind of touched becomes very tacky, and then it just wasn't really doing some of the stuff that I liked and some more traditional mediums that I've used in the past. So about 2 layers ago, I decided to stop using liquid, and I don't really have any desire to use it again. I have a bunch of liquid on my cart over here, so I'll probably be getting rid of that. And so the oil painting medium that I'm using now, you can buy pre-mixed from the Art Tree House. It's a website, and it's called the William F. Martin medium. It is 2 parts water wash linseed oil, 2 parts water wash walnut oil, 1 part Canada balsam, and 2 parts oil of spike lavender. And the oil of spike lavender, even though it has the name oil in it, it's actually the solvent in this medium. So I actually have it here. It's already pre-mixed. I bought it pre-mixed. This is a 2-ounce version. You can buy 2 ounces or 4 ounces. The 2 ounce here is $15. The 4 ounce is $25. And when I switched to this, the painting experience got a lot better. And it also smells a lot better. Like the Canada balsam and I think the oil spike lavender, they create a very nice like piney type of scent. So that's nice. And you can also mix it yourself. They have the ingredients listed on the website and why each one is put in there, because Bill Martin, who came up with those ratios, he wrote an article about why he uses it. The other good thing about the Art Treehouse is that the linseed oil and the walnut oil are water wash. You'll see it on here. So this linseed oil is refined in a different way. If you buy linseed oil from probably like one of the more industrial suppliers, it's most likely refined with this chemical called sodium hydroxide. And linseed oil has to be refined because when you take flaxseed and press it, and you get the oil from that, that's what linseed oil is. That unprocessed oil has a substance called mucilage in it. I think it makes up about 5% of the oil, and it's suspended in the oil. And you cannot have that in your oil paints because it will decompose over time and it'll also darken. So it has to be removed. On the more industrial side, they'll use sodium hydroxide to do that. But when they do that, it also removes some extra fatty acids in the oil that are actually good for oil painting. So using the sodium hydroxide makes it even more of a slower drying oil. So water wash linseed oil is going to be a little bit different than what you'd find in the more industrial process type of linseed oil. If you do buy these by yourself, I would get the water wash linseed and the water washed walnut oil. And it just leads to a more superior type of linseed oil for oil painting. But again, once I switched to that painting medium, it was a lot better, and I felt like the colors were more vibrant and rich, and it was just a lot easier to get the effects that I wanted. Obviously, this is not done yet. I still have quite a bit more refining to do, though it is starting to really come together. I just want to get it to have a more finished look in some areas. If I could start this painting over from the beginning with what I've learned, I would have spent more time doing a monochromatic underpainting. Because there were times where I lost some of the edges, like back in here. You can tell, so these lines, these kind of like much lighter lines out here, they won't actually be that much lighter in value. I just had to mark that up so that way I know I have to go back and fix that. And then some like the edges on the trees and stuff like that, I kind of lost. So I would have spent more time doing a more complete monochromatic underpainting. That's what they call a grisaille. Anyway, I just wanted this to be like an intro video for the channel and for this painting, because I plan to, like, I can go in more depth about the type of oil paints I'm using, the type of brushes I have, what brushes I'm using for what type of effects, you know, how I'm using the medium, how I'm applying the medium, kind of like the studio stuff, like my supplies, canvases, studio lighting, art books, and whatnot. So if you're interested in getting more detailed information about my process and all of this stuff, just like and subscribe. So that way I know people are interested and it'll be worth doing these videos. Anyway, that's all for now.